Hi, and welcome to the Hollywood Bible. I'm Stan Harrington, and I'm an artist. And the reason I begin that way today, because that's what today's episode's about. It's about identity and who you are, who we are, and what we stand for. And that's important because as artists, our identity is often in limbo. And what I mean by that is that if you don't know who you are, other people will define you. And they will have no hesitation in deciding who you are and what you are and pigeonholing you with the least amount of information. Now, throughout this entire series, we've talked about how art is a reflection of life. And that's exactly what's happening in real life today. If you think about it, we spend most of our lives on social media, and people will try to define who you are by a post that you've put up, or a picture, or a comment, or a tweet. You know, in fact, I'll go so far as to say people will try to define you by what you don't say even, like silence is a comment. I have a friend actually who's not very tech savvy and didn't know how to make a certain graphic that he wanted to post onto somebody else's post. And it was really interesting because somebody actually attacked him because he didn't do it fast enough, not knowing that he didn't know how to do it. So to me, it was just like, who's making this decision as to the timing? This person in their own mind has decided this wasn't quick enough, so this is who you are. I mean, it's quite sinister. So if you don't have a strong sense of self and you don't know who you are or what you are, then other people's opinions will have an inordinate effect on you. I mean, I live in Hollywood, and basically people come from all over the world just to be actors here. And part of being an actor is being liked, because you can't be liked. I mean, you can't be hired, I beg your pardon, if you're not liked. You've got to have a pretty thick skin if you want to be an actor, because you come in, you spend time on a stage in front of an audience or in front of a camera or in front of a room of directors, producers and writers who are trying to hire you, that are going to sit there and see you for probably maybe 2 minutes at the most, maybe 5 minutes, and decide in that 5 minutes or in that 2 minutes how good you are, or if you have it. And in actual fact, they don't know anything else about you other than what they see on a sheet of paper. They don't know your life. Just like the people on social media, they've never walked in your shoes, they don't know your life. I know a lot of people that are great actors that are terrible auditioners, but they will decide. And so if you don't have a strong sense if you're good or not, or if you're an artist, their opinions will have a debilitating effect on you. We've talked throughout this entire series very much about the different elements that constitute art, like technique, specificity, detail, style. But the one element that tends to overwhelm actors very much is audience response, which is really, again, just an opinion. So the question remains, or should be asked, if someone doesn't think you're good, or doesn't like your song, or your painting, or your acting, does that mean you're no good? Does that mean you're not an artist? I'll give you the answer. The answer is no. And when we get back from this break, I'll tell you why.
Come join the Stella Adler family of great actors, writers, directors, and producers.
Stella Adler has produced the finest actors that we have today.
Brando, De Niro,
Selma Hayek,
Benicio del Toro,
Sean Astin,
Susan Sarandon,
Henry Winkler in The Fonz.
Warren Beatty. What more do you need?
We're very proud of what has been accomplished.
People come from across the United States and around the world to the Stella Adler Los Angeles.
It's a technique that you can actually learn. It's a technique that you can actually understand. It's a technique that's actually doable.
So we hope to see you soon.
They really know what they're doing.
So we pose the question, is there any value, or are you an artist if somebody doesn't like your work? And the answer was, of course, yes, because it would refute all the other elements that constitute art. It would refute the technique and the style and the detail and the specificity that you put into it. Audience response is just one element. You can't let that one element override everything else. That's why you have to be confident in who you are. And if you've done the work, that's what determines whether you're an artist or not. If you've put in the work, not what somebody else says, because that's just one thing. Even if it's 20 different people or 30 different people. We talked about Van Gogh in another episode. So I recommend you go back and watch that episode if you haven't seen it already. Van Gogh did not sell a painting in his whole lifetime. Did that mean he was no good because not a single person liked his work? You need millions of dollars to buy his paintings now. So he was obviously ahead of his time. He had an audience, he just hadn't found it yet. I think we use sports analogies a lot in series too. So if you take a pure shooter, for example, he might miss 20 or 30 or 40 shots, but he's going to keep shooting because he knows he might hit 20 or 30 or 40 consecutively as well, because he knows the work he's put in the gym, and that is what he's confident of. That's what determines who he is, not one small sample, one small moment. Just like Kobe Bryant, I think at one point with the Lakers, he hit something like, I think, 50, 60, 70, I don't know how many free throws. And then, of course, he misses two. But he doesn't quit because he knows the work he's put in, and it's the work that determines who you are and what you are, not one element of it or one small sample of it, just like one person can't determine your talent with a 2-minute audition. I'm gonna use an example of an audition, actually. I'm gonna tell you a little story about a friend of mine who went for this audition for a series, a network series, not a cable series. It was a top show, and it was touted as being the biggest pilot of the year. And this girl gets the sides, which are the lines that she has to learn, which is a lot, in the morning of the day that she has to do this audition. So she doesn't have a lot of time to practice. And of course, she was very frazzled by the time she got there because it was a long drive to the audition. And she gets there and she knows the casting director, thank God. So when he opens the door and he asks her to come in, she says, I haven't had a chance to read this Shakespearean bullshit, so I'm just going to improvise. So I'm thinking, oh, wow, okay, this is the person, all right. So she goes in, she auditions, and she books the role. Now, when she books the role, after the first day of shooting, the director says, excuse me, but do you know why you got this part? And she goes, I have no idea, because it was a terrible audition. She got the audition, even though it was the worst thing she's ever done. He said, well, we had the cameras rolling the whole time. And the minute you stood in the door and you said to the casting director, I haven't read this Shakespearean bullshit, so I'm just going to improvise. I said, that's the girl I want. And that's how she got the part. Now, sometimes the worst thing you do could be the thing you book, or the worst painting you have could be the thing you sell, or the worst song you write could be the one you sell. You only have to turn on the TV and see how many bad things there are out there that are on TV. It doesn't, just because you're the best doesn't mean you make it. And that's really not even the point of what I was telling you that story about. I wanted to think about the people that went in and auditioned for that show that were brilliant, that had done the work, that were perfect, that may have even been told by the people that were watching them, you're really good. They didn't get the part. It didn't mean they weren't the best. And that's the part that boggles people, because you could be the best and not book. Why is it that the fastest runner can't win the race? That is not the nature of art. And that's why you can't let one element determine whether you've done the work or whether you're good or whether you're worthy. It's not about that. We'll be right back. The Hollywood Bible is now available worldwide, guys, on Amazon, on Kindle and in paperback. But if you're like me and you don't really want to open up a device on a plane or in bed or on Hollywood Boulevard, get the paperback. It's got a little bit more information than the actual streaming series, and it makes a great gift if you know someone who wants to get into the business or be an artist. So fortify your soul, your spirit, yourself, and your dreams, and get yourself a copy of the Hollywood Bible, huh? A friend told me about John Grisham. Apparently he wrote 3 novels that went nowhere, and it wasn't until he was famous that they actually sold. That actually is a true example of what happens in Hollywood too. There's a very famous movie, I'm sure you all know it, Back to the Future, that got passed around like 30 or 40 times. Does that mean it was no good after 1 or 10 or 15 people thought it was no good? You have to believe in your art. The quality of the art is what determines its value, and you have to believe in yourself. If you've done the work, you are an artist, and the work is good. People sometimes don't get parts for all the weirdest reasons, because, you know, they're too tall, too short, too funny, too fat, too skinny, too pretty, not pretty enough. We don't know why we get the parts. We don't know why we sell the records. We don't know why we get the books sold. That's just the nature of the art. I think of the girl that didn't get that part, and I keep thinking, you were the best. Do you know that? Do you know you were the best? Or are you assuming the opinion of the casting director was that you were not the best because you didn't get the part? That's just another element that will debilitate you. You have to believe that you are good if you've done the work. There's a poem about life by Rudyard Kipling. He was a poet from about 100 years ago, an English poet. And in the second or third stanza of this poem, it's called If you want to look it up, he says something like, if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. I mean, that's a powerful line. Triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. That's something that's written on the walls of Wimbledon. Very appropriate. But I think it should be etched in the minds of every artist. I'm Stan Harrington. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again.